by early Bitcoiners, consisting of the Purse.io crew. It's a Bitcoin marketplace that was founded in 2014. Also, for many years, was one of the top funders for open source Bitcoin developers. They were just funded out of just because they loved Bitcoin so much, without any expectation of return. So Purse.io developers helped create Handshake, which is a proof-of-work blockchain, as well as Joseph Poon, who created the Lightning Network. He wrote the Lightning Network paper, along with one other individual, and he also designed Handshake's blockchain. So definitely recommend taking a look at handshake.org and look at the design notes of it, because the design and engineering is unlike any other project that I've seen and what we're trying to accomplish. So whereas with Bitcoin, is basically, to me, Bitcoin means a lot of things, right? But to me, it means freedom, money, right? Whereas with Handshake, what we're trying to do is to create a free and open web. This is a proof of work blockchain. It's entirely community led. So when Purse.io and the developers launched the chain back in February 3rd, 2020, they took a step back, they disappeared, and really it's been entirely organic. What has happened since? So no one is paying me to be up here. My company is ATX. We're establishing .tx is the domain for Texas. .tx is a top-level domain that exists in Handshake's root zone. And so I guess get into the explanation of what Handshake is. It's a decentralized naming protocol, with the goal being to become the base of the decentralized web. So Handshake, if you think about competitors, it isn't Ethereum name service, .eth. It's not unstoppable domains. It's ICANN, which is basically the entity that controls the internet root zone of what we all use today, dating back to the late 90s. So .com, .org, if y'all don't know, is actually at the very core is controlled by a centralized entity called ICANN, and then of course they delegate, the responsibilities of the top-level domain to, of .com to VeriSign, for example, but it's centralized at its core. So it's my belief that we're going to be moving into a more decentralized, free, free future, for all of us, where we can have, self-sovereignty. It's kind of important that how we're communicating with one another is decentralized. And if you think about it, we'll get into it here in a little bit. I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but really my belief is Handshake and Bitcoin go hand in hand together. So these next few slides, I'll just do a few little shout outs of what's kind of going on, what's caught my eye in Handshake and the decentralized web. I also want anyone here, to share what you've been working on, as well as what has interested you. It could be a Bitcoin, Ethereum, you name it, whatever catches your eye. Feel free to speak up, whether it's about this or anything else. We'll have time if anybody else wants to speak. I want to shout out Shake Station, built by a developer. His name's Eskimo. He's done a lot of really great things in the Handshake community over the past few years. No one's paid him anything, just building for free in his own time. But basically, here in the recent months, he built Shake Station, which is a marketplace for Handshake names. So Handshake names, you can think of them as Web3 domains, NFT domains. They're top-level domains. Compared to like registering a .eth domain, it could be null.eth. That's a second level domain. With Handshake, like by interacting with Handshake's blockchain, you can actually register top level domains. So it's Handshake or null in essence. So that kind of shows that there's nobody that is above you, that could kind of rug your domain or censor you. I mean, you have true ownership of your name with Handshake top-level domain. But if you're curious, getting started and picking up a few Handshake names, you can win them. I mean, I'm sure Marcus, he's, what's the cheapest Handshake domain that you've registered before? Like, how much did it cost? Would you say?
I think you get them for free if nobody bids against you, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the way it works with registering Handshake names, and we'll get into a little bit later, is basically you're just interacting with the blockchain, opening up an auction for a name that hasn't been registered yet, and if no one places another bid, if you're the only bid, then you basically get that domain for free. Okay, it's not like, Shake Station, they take a very small fee. It's like probably a penny, per bid, or, I don't know what it is, but it's very, very small. So it is kind of like, you're having to trust Shake Station compared to, I'll get into more of a self-custody wallet. But I still recommend checking out Namebase. Was the most predominant marketplace for Handshake names, as well as now Shake Station is there too. So shakestation.io, and if you can access Handshake sites, so if you have the Beacon browser downloaded, or a few other browsers, or Fingertip installed on one of your devices, your mobile phone or desktop, I recommend just going to ShakeStation / and then that will take you to, that's how we should be doing it really. It's a decentralized front end that you can actually use it today. Another thing is Namecheap and Blue Sky. So Namecheap is a huge player in Handshake. How many here have heard of Blue Sky before? Yeah, a few of us. So this is kind of, this is
Jack Dorsey's Blue Sky?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Jack Dorsey's Blue Sky, although he, helped in the early days, but he doesn't necessarily have decision-making abilities these days. But it's kind of like I don't know how you would describe it. I mean, this is probably simplifying it, but like a decentralized social media platform or protocol that's been in the works for a couple of years. Jack Dorsey, as you just said, was kind of like backing it in the early days. I would say like probably in 2018 was when the paper was written on Blue Sky. But it launched earlier this year. It's still invite only. I don't know how many users there are. A couple months ago, maybe there's 30,000 users when it last checked. But what I want to bring up though is Namecheap's recent partnership with Blue Sky. Basically, I guess one of the many things that makes Blue Sky different than a centralized platform like Twitter is that they use DNS for their usernames. So you can, like when you create an account on Blue Sky, you can actually, if you have like your own domain, is it okay if I say your domain? Lucid.ai, that can actually, is that right?
.art.
.art?
And apparently it's .art is something important that I didn't even know. I just bought it because I like the domain.
Oh yeah, .art. I know the individuals that own .art. It's pork bun, top level of design, owns it, like you know them too, Marcus. So that's really cool. So lucid.art, that's actually your username on Blue Sky. So just think in the past with like usernames on social media, accounts, or all these different usernames that we have, dozens over the years, right? And you have to like memorize each username, and each username is going to be different depending on what's available, how early you get in. Well, not with Blue Sky. It's literally a domain that you own. Of course, they'll issue you a free, subdomain, if you want to just use theirs, but you can actually use your own custom domain that you own. So no one can be lucid.art but you. And that's also going to be true. This is just kind of like an early development of how I see where we're going to head in the web. So whether with Blue Sky, with Nostr, with all these other decentralized platforms, there can only be one you. And I really think that DNS has so much potential, and why I'm so excited about Handshake and its possibilities is because there's so much more to it than just websites. So yeah, if anybody wants to take a look at Blue Sky, I have a lot of Blue Sky invites. So just come find me after this, and I'll hook you up and get you onboarded to Blue Sky, so that way you can see. But one last thing, while I have this picture right here, this is me. What is my username? It's move2.tx. .tx, that's not part of iAccount. That's what we're doing on Handshake. And so one of the deals with Namecheap's partnership, it's not necessarily official yet, but one with Namecheap's name servers, seeing that they support Handshake names, if you register a .tx domain on Namecheap, you can actually use that on Blue Sky. So it's kind of like a workaround, and Blue Sky knows about it. So I think that's kind of cool to be able to use .tx, and there's other Handshake domains that you can register on Namecheap as well. Yeah.
Is it guaranteed to be supported, or is it just kind of like a workaround that might be deprecated sometime?
It could be deprecated in the future. I mean, I thought it was going to be temporary, but you know, it's been several months now, and the Blue Sky team is very well aware of it. They included Handshake in their initial white paper back several years ago. So there's always, initially when they launched earlier this year before this partnership, you know, there was talks, but they weren't, you know, this is still kind of, you know, very early stages for them, so they didn't want to expand to Handshake names like our top level domains that we have, right? We have 12 million top level domains besides .tx. So they came out and said that, but then, you know, now you can register, you know, Handshake domains or second level domains on Namecheap. So it could, this just shows you it's more of a use case of what is possible. Don't make any guarantees that they wouldn't, you know, make any kind of changes to prevent that in the future. But it's been several months now. You know, I've had a .tx domain up and it hasn't, you know, been removed yet from their system. But it could.
It's probably going to break too many things if they decide to remove it. So I'm guessing that they're probably not going to remove it.
It's not worth their time. But yeah. But anyways, if you want Blue Sky invite, just find me afterwards, and you can download like their mobile app and everything. But I'd be happy to hook y'all up there. Yeah, that leads me to one of the things I did here this past month. I made some over 100 yards of Texas native grape jelly. I've already talked to y'all about that, but I have some extra ones here for everyone that attended in person. Feel free to take one home with you. It's made using wild grapes. Mustang grapes is what they're called. That just grows in your yard, right?
Yeah.
It grows in your yard, and it grows on my place as well. And so I just decided to make some grape jelly just for the community and just to be able to share it with others. For anybody online, I'd be happy to ship you a jar of jelly. I've done it, you know, a few times here over the past month. You just need to register a .tx domain, and then I'll cover the shipping costs. But feel free just to reach out to me. I'd be happy to ship you some in the United States only. And that gets me to one of the more exciting recent happenings is the launch of HNS.id. This was over the past week. It's on that name base, which is, as I just said, a huge player in Handshake. They've been working on for the past year. It's an open source and on-chain registry for a decentralized second level domains. That part is huge. And these top level domains are anchored in the Handshake root zone, so it offers, you're not going to be able to find you know, a domain that's more decent, a second level domain that's more decentralized than these. It does use Optimism, which is a layer 2 on Ethereum. So there is that. So it kind of exists in both of these worlds where you can be able to register these NFT domains. Including .hey, which is what we launched this past week, or .hns, which I think is a pretty good one. For the first time, it just became available to register .hns domain here in the past week, so it's still really early. You know, with .e, how many do we have? Like a few million, right? .hns, it was just launched this past week. Just a few other comments on that. With Handshake, it offers you the most decentralization. If you care about freedom, there's not going to be another you know, blockchain domain that is better than that, and be able to set up truly censorship-resistant websites. So that is possible with these domains, as well as now we're kind of you know, going across the chasm to more of the Ethereum ecosystem, which is a lot more liquid. There's, you know, these huge, vibrant communities there. And so now on Ethereum, you can easily register these domains, you know, by, you know, with MetaMask. You know, it's basically just how you'd register any other blockchain domain, right, Marcus? That you've experienced. So yeah, I think that's really cool, and you can actually use these as wallet names, which is pretty cool too. That's definitely a use case for Web3 domains, and it basically just takes like an ENS bridge, and it's still a work in progress and everything. But you can register, you know, like Noel.hey is me, and you can actually send me ETH, Bitcoin, HNS by just typing out null, it's null.hey.hns.eth is the bridge currently for .hey domains. That's kind of how it works for wallet names. But of course, in the future with wallet integrations and partnerships, that will become more streamlined. So here's a little bit about .hey. I don't think I have to, give a definition for it, but it is the most, I would say, informal greeting in the English language. I had registered it when I was early on in Handshake. Handshake launched in February 2020, and I registered it in June, and that sounds like I got to it late, but it became available in June. It's kind of how they did a year rollout for domains, where not all of them became available at once compared to Namecoin. That's one of their flaws in their design. They just released everything where you could register any .bit domain, and so you had a lot of name squatters. I know one or two of them. They just snatched up all the really great domains and nobody's building on them. I think 4 or 5 years after Namecoin, there's only 30 sites. It's from some research that I heard. But anyway, so registered that, been sitting on it for a while, and saw this as a really good opportunity because I wanted something that's decentralized here, and that's robust compared to .tx right now. .tx is on Namecheap and other traditional domain registrars, but at the end of the day, you still have to trust those domain registrars. But .tx will be likely moving to hns.id in the future, where you can be able to keep these domains on Namecheap, but then also withdraw your .tx domains to your own private wallet as well. So I think it'll be good to have that convenience, or if you want that control. But yeah, I think these will be really great for social media platforms, messaging as well. You can set up simple sites. That's kind of how I mentioned about Pay, and then also the wallet name aspect as well. So those are some of the use cases, what you can do with .hey right now. This kind of leads me to, are there any questions so far on anything that we just talked about? Okay. This leads me to Bitcoin. Well, Nostr and Bitcoin kind of go hand in hand, even though Nostr isn't technically built on Bitcoin. But how many here have heard of Nostr before? Okay, so we have a few of us here. So this is, once again, probably somebody else could explain it better, but it is kind of like, I would say it's kind of like a decentralized communication, protocol, not necessarily a social media platform, because with Nostr you can be able to have dozens of different kind of interfaces and still be able to have your same public key. It just kind of depends on which platform you want to experience. But what I want to bring up with Nostr is, and this is an issue that I saw recently, is they have, I think it's called Damus is the app. It's an app that you can download from the App Store or Android Store. And a few months ago, Apple decided to kind of ban the app, or made an announcement, hey, we're banning that because they're doing tipping in the app on the Lightning Network. And so they, Apple saying, hey, I want my cut, because normally they get 30% for any kind of transactions or payments that have to do, with the apps on their platform. And so Jack Dorsey begged, you can look at it on X, I guess, that's what they call it. He is begging, Apple, hey, don't ban them, this isn't right and everything. But my argument is we shouldn't have to rely on them, the App Store, we shouldn't have to rely on .com or all this other stuff where censorship can go on. I believe that Handshake has a real value proposition to work together with Nostr in two different areas. The first one is for decentralized websites, so that way you can be able to interact on Nostr or Blue Sky, by having a decentralized front end, so they can't necessarily go to GoDaddy, or Namecheap and saying hey, you need to take this domain down, which happens. That happened with Tornado Cash last August, and that's just one example. That's just fresh on my mind. Another thing, similar to Blue Sky, Nostr it's called NIT5, which is a improvement proposal. Basically, that NIT5 is basically where you can be able to map your public keys to DNS-based identifiers. So Handshake names Handshake is basically DNS on blockchain, so there's not really too much configuration that you have to do. And so to me, would be a game changer because I played around, you know, on a few different Nostr apps earlier this year, and in the Bitcoin community, they love to share their public key. Can anybody memorize this? Or, you know, like, is that really human friendly at all? Like this long string? And I'm like, what are y'all doing, guys? Like, and yet here, you know, we can bring up, you know, like these blockchain domains, you know, whether it's Handshake or not. I'm like, how do you not see the value proposition here to say, hey, you can find me on Nostr at null.tx. That's where you can find me. It doesn't matter where you are, which app you're on for Nostr. You can just look up null.tx and find them, instead of how they have been doing it since it's launched publicly. It's just this long string. So it's a little frustrating, but I do know that those in the Handshake community, you know, have had conversations with those behind Nostr and, you know, some of the leading apps, and surprisingly, they're actually, some of them are actually open to have, you know, be able to utilize Handshake names, even though we are another blockchain. We are a separate blockchain, so that's really cool. But if you're wanting to look into this proposal, just go to GitHub. There it is. There, the link. If you actually want to look at some of the links that I'm providing here as resources, just I can share the slide deck with you after this. This is even more under the radar. If you haven't heard of Nostr, there's pretty much guaranteed you haven't heard of Thunderbolt. And it caught my eye because I'm kind of closely aligned with what Namecheap is doing, and Richard Kirkendall, who's the founder of Namecheap. A little quick statement on that is they were one of the first, I guess, one of the first businesses to accept Bitcoin for registering domains back in 2013. So Namecheap is very much aligned with with the Bitcoin ethos and with Handshake ethos. Yeah.
Wait, but Thunderbolt is also like the thing that Apple used to have before they moved to USB-C and like used before, right?
Really? Well, can you here? Let me just. I mean, as you can see here, I'll touch on that, and I want you to see if this actually is that. This is a recent patent that they just got approved, a U.S. patent, and it's leveraging peer-to-peer communication through DNS. So this is another point. This is something I've been in the domain space, DNS, for several years now, and this is even something I have thought of before. Have you, Marcus? With basically with phone calls and chat. So instead of having a phone number, you can actually call, you know, like null.tx or iheartdomains. Like, and that's actually,
Somebody actually just asked that question during my spaces today.
About this, or just the idea?
They were wishing the utility into existence, about being able to use names and message like natively like you do right now.
Yeah.
Just like SMS and communicate, just using the blockchain domains like that.
Well, I'm not saying this is gonna take place tomorrow, but I mean, from your conversation, like you're leading a talk earlier today, right? Then now we have this, and this is obviously just a patent, and there's a lot of patents that never become anything, but I'm still pretty excited about the idea of it, because I am frustrated by how, like, this system of, phones work, and with all the spam I get. And so, like, just a few value, props for this is you don't have to memorize or look up numbers, obviously, because, if I'm who I am, then, if I choose to be public, make my number be public, then you can be able to call out. This is also really good for businesses too, if you think about it. So, like, think of like this huge business. I'm not going to mention any names specifically, but imagine they have a call center. Anybody, it doesn't matter if you're on the side of the road, it doesn't matter where you are, you're going to know, how to reach them, compared to having to go to their website or having to go to Google and like taking a few steps. Well, you already have it memorized of what their what their domain is, and you can just be able to call them up. That's pretty cool. These also offer more privacy and more control. So I don't, this is a long patent and everything. I'm trying to make it as condensed as possible, but there is a way that for you to be able to filter out spam, which I, would dream about. I'd pay a lot for if that were to come true. But I have the actual patent here, And this is just one of the images that I got there of like, on a call with, and this is like a subdomain that they have, but it kind of just gives you an idea of what is possible, with DNS and HNS then. Because obviously Namecheap has devoted a lot of time and resources to Handshake. This is also something that's extremely under the radar. I'm just, I try to do things that aren't really too overhyped, and we'll see if anything sticks or if y'all find value in anything. Has anybody heard of Warp before? Warp Dex. Okay, this just came out last week. It was announced at a Stanford blockchain event by Joseph Poon and Christopher Jeffrey, or JJ. So these are two very private individuals that not only created the Lightning Network, built out Purse, and what JJ has done. I mean, I can get into it. Basically, rewrote Bitcoin from scratch in a couple different programming languages. No individual has ever done that in history, and he's done it at least 2 times in 2 different programming languages. JavaScript is being one of them that ended up becoming the base for Handshake. So these guys are extremely smart. I think we should probably pay attention. Joseph Poon, used to be an early leader in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and he hasn't done a public talk in like 6-7 years. So I recommend, I'm not gonna give you too much of a rehash of it, but go YouTube it, it's Stanford Video YouTube channel. It's at the 1 hour and 20 minute mark, and it's like a 30-40 minute introduction. But basically what this is, in a small part, it's this invention that they have come up with is a smaller part of what they're really going for, which I'm not privy to, but it's a decentralized exchange order matching for UTXOs like Bitcoin, Doge, HNS, and it matches buyers and sellers completely on chain. And what is different, because there's decentralized exchanges in the past, but those are all based on linear matching engines, so you can only fulfill one order at a time. And supposedly, with what they've created, the logarithmic matching engine, this enables what we're used to with traditional setups, where you can have true limit order books, and auctions, and it completely dismantles what we've done previously that isn't scalable. So you can fulfill hundreds of thousands of orders instantly, compared to what the DEX setup is based on right now. It's kind of like one order at a time, and it's whatever meets in the middle. But anyways, it's coming mid to late September, so you are probably one of the first ones to know about it, besides those at that talk. And I recommend listening to that talk and just kind of keeping your ears to the ground to see what happens, because these guys are more innovators. They're not marketers or anything like that. So what they've developed are foundational technologies, including Handshake. Quick, before I forget about it, our next meetup, I know we were hosting meetups on a monthly basis. We had 2 in April, including 1 here during Consensus, where we had close to 100 attendees. Then we kind of stopped for a few months. We're going to get back into it. It's getting a little bit cooler. And what we did a lot last year was have meetups at different beer gardens around Austin. We try to change it up. And really, why I like to do beer gardens is just to have an open floor, just be able to have casual conversation, talk about whatever you're interested in. It doesn't have to be Handshake, it doesn't have to be decentralized web. It can be what you're working on. It can be about what you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be about technology. It can be about Texas. It can be about travel. It can be about anything. That's how these meetups work, and that's how I want our community to be like. Anyways, it's gonna be on a Saturday because we have quite a few community members that aren't able to make it in the week, including some that travel from other places. I know Marcus is very dedicated, coming from San Antonio. We have some that come from Dallas and other parts of Texas as well, and so having it on the weekend will be nice for us to be able to meet with others that normally wouldn't get to come. But we'd love to have everyone here just so we can continue the conversation. Does anybody want to touch on anything or bring anything up about what was said, or anything else before I kind of get into just talking about the happening event?
What does it need a coin?
What?
Why do you need a coin for it?
Yeah,
Why does it need a block for it?
Yeah, that's actually in this presentation here. So great. I actually coined the term the happening. because it didn't have a name. It's basically a soft fork. It's going to be Handshake's first soft fork. That's going to take place in late January, early February by design. By the way, is what this is involved with. So upon Handshake's launch in February 2020, we had reserved ICANN's top-level domains, such as like .com. We had reserved that for VeriSign, and .cloudflare for cloudflare.com. And if we weren't going to do a soft fork, then those would actually become available for auction. And we definitely want to avoid that because we want to leave it to those that have the rights to it. And we reserved not only these top-level domains, but we also reserved what was called the Alexa Top 100,000. So at the time when they did the snapshot, maybe in like in 2018, when they did the snapshot of the top 100,000 most visited sites at that time, and we reserved those names for the respectful owners, so they could actually, and I've done it myself quite a bit by getting different ICANN domains that basically you just prove ownership, cryptographically, and then you get the top level domain on Handshake as a result, along with HNS Coin, which we'll get into the value props of that. But what the soft fork does is it basically, for not all of them, but for the Alexa top 10,000, we continue to have those reserved indefinitely, as well as the ICANN top level domains like .com, .org are going to continue to be reserved for the rightful owners. Yeah.
So what does it mean reserved? Like people can use it, or
They're unclaimable. They're unusable. Besides, if VeriSign claims .com on Handshake, then they own .com and they can use it, but no one else has access to it. You can't open an auction for it.
Wait, so what if you own a domain name that is like Alexa top like 11,000? Like
Alexa top 11,000.com.
Right.
So let's say that was part of that original list that was reserved. Basically, I would add a few records to Alexa top 11,000.com on Namecheap, for example. Maybe I'll use Cloudflare just because we use DNSSEC is how you have to kind of like prove that you own that domain and basically interact with Handshake's blockchain. It can't be done on a namebase, it has to be on a self-custody wallet. Though ShakeStation actually has implemented this as well too. That basically afterwards I would win, or I wouldn't win, I would claim .Alexa top 11,000 / so I'd own the top level domain version of it, but it wouldn't have .com in the domain. But the big news with the happening, why I call it the happening, because we have the happening, or having for Bitcoin, right? Having to do with the block rewards getting cut every 4 years. And Handshake had that happen earlier this year. But with the happening, basically close to 80,000 Handshake top level domains are going to become available for the first time. And it's not my belief, it's just a fact that this is going to be a huge gold rush for investors, entrepreneurs, dare I say speculators. I mean, it's just a reality. So how I just said earlier, how I registered .hey back in 2020, maybe I got in the early part of Handshake's young infant history. This is going to be a second iteration of that, where all these names are going to become available at the same time once the soft fork happens. But why does it matter? Why do you care? What can you do with them? We've touched on it a little bit, but I think it's let's just kind of focus on the Handshake ecosystem today, right? We don't have a centralized company or foundation. No one's pushing this forward besides all of us in this room can, and others around the world. But right now, you can kind of see the growth that we've had since the launch. We're, I believe, maybe 3,000 domains away from 12 million Handshake top-level domains on Handshake's blockchain right now. Those are just top-level domains. And all of those were obtained either by, claiming your reserve name. That was only maybe 6,000 names. So then you think about close to 12 million other names were won by interacting with the blockchain, opening up an auction for available name, winning that auction, and it's called a decentralized victory auction. So it's not like anybody is behind on the other side that's going to be pocketing your money. It's literally you're interacting with a blockchain. It's beautiful, and I really recommend y'all trying it out. And as Marcus said, you can win a name for free, but you need at least one HNS just to really open up the auctions and everything. But and one thing that, yeah, we'll get into in another slide about how the kind of like bidding and auction mechanisms work. So what is a name worth? Just to kind of highlight a few different areas, you can see, right, all this kind of like sidebar chart. That's from Name Basis Marketplace, some of the top secondary sales. So this isn't winning the name initially, this is afterwards. After I own that name, I choose to sell it to somebody else. And so you can kind of see some of those. But what I'll highlight is the text for all of us. So Namecheap CEO, Richard Kirkendall, already touched on a few times. He had won .s in an auction, not a decentralized auction. It was an auction, like just that we did, the community did it online. A HandyCon, it's a global Handshake event. He won .s, a top level domain on Handshake, last year for $750,000. It's the highest NFT domain sale ever, and you probably didn't hear about it because guess what? Handshake doesn't have a marketing department. They have me. That my voice only takes us so far. And you may have, I know a few domain sites covered this and everything, but basically it's the highest sale ever reported. And you have to ask yourself why. This isn't a speculator. This guy knows what he's doing. Namecheap, second largest domain registrar in the world, a private company compared to GoDaddy. So you're talking about $1 billion company, him choosing to use their capital to invest, in .s. They've invested, at least, 8 figures, I would say, here in the past 2 years in the Handshake ecosystem. You have to ask yourself why. And I would recommend looking at, what he's talked about in the past and what their ethos is at Namecheap and why I do respect them about what's going on. But I believe it's about the future, the potential, the utility of what .s can mean. NamesCon is another highlight. I know that's where I met Marcus last year. It was actually around this time last year, wasn't it? Late August, early September. We had NamesCon, which is the world's largest domain conference. And Handshake ATX helped organize more of like the blockchain domain section, but we had an auction down on the first floor, and .e sold $300,000. So we're talking about in a bear market for whatever you want to call crypto, NFTs, everything's a bear market during this time last year, and it can argue still is today. Sold for $300,000. And the one thing I always want to point out is there was a traditional domain auction with professionals that have been in the domain space since the 90s, and they had an auction the day before where they had hundreds of .com and other premium domains for sale, and .e sold for more than all of them. It pissed a few people off, okay? I'll just share that. But I think that kind of shows what is possible. And the main bidders on that, because we're there, the top 3 bidders that bid more than $100,000 were all from the traditional domain industry. So Namecheap, Epic.com, which really cares about freedom, and then Porkbot, which is also like the same guys that own like .art and a few other top level domains that I count. So those are kind of like the top 3 bidders. Did you have a question?
I was just curious, like, if the bidders were paying like with Bitcoin, but I guess they were actually like big brands, so they need to pay Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's Flamingo Handshake, and so they're kind of like just part of the community. So since it's such a large amount and Handshake is so small, typically we like to try to denominate everything in H&S. That's how I think about like what domains are worth is like H&S. Having said that, when you're talking about 6 figures, like $300,000 or $750,000, I believe like there's like a certain portion has to be paid in H&S, and then the rest can be paid in Bitcoin or Ethereum usually, or stablecoin. Is how those auctions work.
And who actually gets this money?
The ones that owned, there's somebody that won .s or .e, like here in 2020, maybe beginning of 2021 by interacting with the blockchain, right? So that was the decentralized auction, but then afterwards you own that name, and then they decided to put it up for sale in this, this regular auction that we have. Any other comments, Marcus?
No, they basically flipped it.
Yeah, it's a flip. It's a flip. So they held it for a year, and then they ended up profiting like 100,000%, or to something along those lines. So here's a small snippet of what is coming to you and what you can have your eyes on. So these names, I mean, can we call them virgin names? Like they have never been able to, open an auction for or bid on. So no one's ever owned them before. They've been locked up with the keys thrown to the side, and they're going to become available by early February 2024. These are just some of the ones I highlighted. .king, I think that'd be a pretty badass username. .goat as well, greatest of all time. But just take a look at this list. .text, .ui, so like the techie ones, techie top level domains have done really well for second level domain registrations from what I've seen. And then also we have a lot of geo domains too, which is kind of like my interest. So you have like .mv for Nevada, .oregon, .michigan. So similar to what I'm doing with .tx, where we have a couple thousand domain registrations, even though we're still really early trying to establish .tx as a domain for Texas, y'all can do something similar. I will let you know that I do have my eyes on .texas, and it's not because I want to profit from it, but last year myself and a few other community members, we actually provided testimony at the Texas State Capitol in front of a blockchain committee a few times. And we did bring awareness that .texas has been reserved since 2020 for texas.gov, for the
Text it.
yeah, .texit. You can take a look on that. I guarantee you that is already owned by somebody, but you should look into that. Maybe it's for sale. Maybe you can gift it to the right people. I'd be on board with that. But
Shit.
That's already
No.
taken. But I mean, who knows though? Who knows? You have to really look at this list. I have a spreadsheet of all these names that haven't been available before. I can share it with you all. It's public. It's a public spreadsheet for you all to be able to kind of comb through the list, because this is a small snippet. There's 80,000 domains. I would say most of them probably aren't worthwhile, but I would probably say there has to be, several thousand, like maybe 10 to 20,000 domains that are going to be a premium in the future, that you can build a lot of really cool stuff on, or put in the hands of somebody that will. But I do want to obtain .texas to be able to hold on to them until the state of Texas becomes a little bit more, I don't know, like, I guess they care about like tech. I mean, they can realize the, technology or freedom. It may take a few years, but we're associated with the Texas Blockchain Council, who's a pretty big player within the Texas State Legislature. So I believe as Handshake matures that there could be a use case, because there are a lot of really good use cases for .texas.
Do you have to pay for it to bid, or like how does it work? Or registration of February?
Oh, okay. This actually brings me to this point. The question: H&S coin. Why do we have a coin? Why do you need a coin? Let's get into like some of like what you have to do with the coin. If you recall at the beginning, Handshake is a proof of work blockchain. You have to be able, in order to have security, you have to be able to pay the miners with a coin. And in order, to have, what we're trying to do is have a decentralized root zone. We can't be building on top of another technology. We can't have any kind of centralized component. In order to obtain these top level domains, these H&S names, by interacting with the blockchain, you must have H&S coin. And as I already said, Namebase is one, ShakeStation is another, and then Bob Wallet is what I would recommend for the self-custody wallet. Go to bobwallet.io and just download your own wallet. So the utility of the H&S coin, it can be used to open new auctions, what I've talked about, so you kind of need it. I would recommend, having it before February, having some H&S coin to bid on the names. So you have to place bids. You're not bidding in dollars or anything like that. You're bidding like 10 H&S or 100 H&S or 1,000 H&S. And part of that bid, you can place a blind to obscure what your actual bid is. So you have your real bid, and then you have your blind, and then you have at the end of the auction, which takes place over 7 days. It's based on so many blocks. Then it's time for you to reveal your true bid, and then that's what you actually bid. Yes, Marcus?
It's been forever since I've actually had to go get some H&S coin, and some of the things that I hear quite often is that it's difficult to do so. I don't know if it's become more difficult since the last time, where basically you were waiting for Namebase to have liquidity and checking back and forth to then send Bitcoin to it, etc. Has that process improved at all, or what are the avenues for people who are going to be watching this and saying, okay, now I want some coin?
Yeah,
Where do I go
that's a
get it?
great question, and I wouldn't necessarily say that it's been completely solved for yet. You know, unfortunately, in the past several years, for exchanges, you have to pay, you know, for listings, or have to have VC investors that kind of contact the exchanges. And we don't really have, you know, currently too much of that right now. So Handshake is listed on some exchanges, including Namebase. It kind of just depends with Namebase. It is a good place to get started, to where you can buy HNS with Bitcoin or USD, so you can connect your bank account, even if you're a US resident, and just buy the HNS there, and then you can always withdraw it to Bob Wallet or another self-custody wallet. But I would say it is still an ongoing issue that we're trying to work through as a community with obtaining it. Yeah.
There was going to be a soft fork, right, of HNS. So
Yeah, that's what this,
okay,
yep.
if I obtain HNS tonight, and after the fork, do I need to do anything else, or will I be? It's the same.
It kind of depends on where you have it, but we've already, this past month, we started signaling to like the miners and everything. So we've contacted, I believe, all the pools. So like Ant Pool, there's a few other pools, DX Pool, where basically they kind of take care of things on their own, and they make the changes in the pool, and that's communicated to the miners. As far as from your perspective, we'll probably, if you have it on Namebase, you don't have to do anything. You know, you can just rest assured. If you have it on Bob Wallet, I'm sure you'll have to update your wallet during that time. But it's not going to be, this is a soft fork. It's not anything like too crazy. It's mainly focused on the names of what we've mentioned this evening. But a few other things is, yeah, to bid on the names, and then also to update the DNS records. It kind of involves like a small little transaction fee. It's literally like a fraction of a penny. But in order to add TXT records or any other kind of records, it does involve like a small fee that gets paid to the miners in order to make your DNS record updates on chain. Having said that, if you use like a name server or something else, like I use DNS Simple for a lot of my domains, they're kind of compatible with Handshake, and so that's kind of where I have my DNS records. Then it doesn't cost you anything. It's just if you want to like make any kind of DNS record changes done on chain, involves like a small fraction. And then one other component is you do have to renew your names every 2 years. I know that may sound frightening. Oh man, you have to renew your names every 2 years, but literally it's just a heartbeat transaction, just to kind of maybe show proof of life, like, hey, I'm still here, kind of a deal. It's literally as of now, what it's been over the past couple of years, it's like literally a fraction of the HNS, so it's like a penny max to renew your names. Sure, if you have thousands of names, that could add up to maybe a few dollars, but it's really really not that big of a deal. Perhaps in the future, if Handshake chain becomes even more active. I mean, you saw we have 12 million top level domains. It's not too bad of a start, but let's say we get even more traction on the blockchain, then there could be higher renewal fees in the future. But that gets paid to a miner, doesn't get paid to like a third party or another company. Yep. Yes, you first. Did you have a question? Oh, okay.
There's a question there.
Yeah.
Can you renew ahead of time? Like .com, you can register like for 10 years, I think up to 10 years, right?
That's a great question. So you can't renew for 10 years, but you can always renew at any time. However, it only kind of kicks the ball 2 years forward. So it's only a max of 2 years, unless there's a change in the code in the future. That's how it's been. That's how it's been as of now. So yeah. So if you have any kind of valuable names, like before you forget about it, if it's been like maybe it's a year out or 6 months out, it's probably better just to go ahead and just say like, hey, I'm here. It's just a click of a button, really, in Bob Wallet. For Namebase, Namebase automatically renews the names for you, so you don't even have to think about it. So they try to make it as easy as possible for beginners, compared to if you own your
But
names.
then it means that like your date is kind of like going to be like moving backwards, right? Like it expires like say like March this year, right? But then you renew it like next February, and then it expires February the following year.
2 years.
Right?
It's always 2 years out.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So
it
from
is
the
gonna
date
be
that
moving kind of like backwards, right?
How is it backwards?
Because you're going to be renewing it, presumably like at least like a month or like a week before it expires.
Yeah.
So like the expiration date will be kind of like moving kind of
Oh,
backwards,
gotcha.
right?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, so it does kind of like fall back depending on when you decide to renew it. That is true. That's a good point compared to what traditional domains, that date stays the same, right?
How does name change? How do they how far ahead do they usually renew? Like
Name
data
base?
study? Yeah.
I mean, it kind of depends, really. I'm not a part of their team, but I mean, usually it's just nothing that you really experience on the front end. But there have been instances. I mean, they are a company. There are issues at hand. So it's just that if you do have valuable names, I would say at some point it would probably be best to bring them to Bob Wallet, because I have seen examples. It may have been last year where they name base was having issues or like change of ownership, and they had a lot of things working out, and I believe they actually let some names expire, which is like a huge no-no, so that way the owners had to reclaim their name, or when it ended up going back up for auctions. I believe that did happen last year. So that's why I say like not your keys, not your coins, not your names with that. But Namebase I would give them credit. They've gotten their shit together, here over this past year. So they're
Do they
more
normally do it
responsible.
like 2 weeks before, like 1 month before expiration, or like do you know what is their normal procedure?
I have no idea. I could probably look at some of the names I've held on Namebase and see, but I can't tell you exactly how far in advance.
Namebase does have a Discord channel, so you could always
They have a
ask
Discord
in there.
chat, so you can have a little bit of accountability. I know they're most of their team too. So we are a pretty small but vibrant community, and there's accountability. It's not like they're going to disappear. I mean, Namecheap owns the majority of Namebase now, so I mean there is I would say responsible players involved with Namebase. Just a few other things with HNS Coin, just to kind of sum it up. So I mentioned that it has like 5 or 6 different use cases for it. And what Andrew Lee, he was a co-creator of Handshake, he's the one that founded first. He came up with this concept called adoption in progress technology, compared to, and basically he applied that to Handshake and Bitcoin, to where basically the foundation of the technology is there. I mean, Handshake is, most amazing, beautiful piece of technology. But the thing is, you need to have adoption of it. You need more users of it compared to something like Ethereum. I believe that was more kind of like, building in progress, or like, it's still kind of like a work in progress where you still need to be building things. It's not, completely 100%, where it's supposed to be. And I think Vitalik, would definitely attest for that over the years, with like how, we constantly have to be making changes with the foundational piece of technology. So I thought that was kind of interesting to have 2 different types of camps. But the last thing I'll make a note with the auctions is, and why it relates to the coin is, when we're doing these decentralized auctions, so let's say, like Marcus is bidding on, what name, does any name catch your eye on that list earlier?
Boss is a good name.
Which one?
Boss.
Dot boss? Yeah, let's say dot boss.
So let's say we're all bidding on this in the room, okay? And let's say Marcus is the top bidder. How much you thinking it's worth?
What dot boss would probably go for?
Yeah. You just throw.
I mean, at least 100,000 H&S.
Yeah, let's say 100,000 H&S, and then you have Noel. Maybe I'm more conservative, but I mean, we all realize dot boss. Goodness. But I bid 80,000 H&S. I'm the second highest bidder. So the auction goes for 7 days, and then there's another 7 days where you have to reveal your bid, kind of show everybody, hey, this is what I bid. Maybe I was faking you out and like putting this huge fake bid, and so everybody thought I bid 500,000 H&S, but it turned out to be 80,000 H&S. So after the end of that reveal period, then Marcus gets .boss. He gets it in his own wallet. Okay, it's yours. You minted it, I guess you could say, and you can use it however you want to. You can list those domains on Namecheap, HNS.id. There's a lot of different avenues that you can go, or you can just use .boss as your username itself. You don't necessarily need any second level domains, although I think we would want some. But basically, Marcus would be paying the second highest bidder price, so he wouldn't pay 100,000 H&S. He would pay 80,000 H&S. So that's a pretty good deal then, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the recommendation is to bid what you think a name is worth. Obviously, there's going to be a few different strategies for this time around. I think that we should all kind of discuss this through, what the best best way to go about it is when you have 80,000 names become available, because this hasn't happened before, that he pays 80,000 HNS. But once again, that doesn't go to me, the second highest bidder. That doesn't go to the Handshake company or foundation, because there is none. That is burned from the coin supply. Burned. So it basically over the years, where you have with, sometimes people say Bitcoin is, deflationary over the long run, with you losing your coins and yada yada, the block rewards and everything else. Well, that's literally baked into the Handshake protocol of like, when you're bidding on these auctions, the second highest bid goes and just is burned from the supply. It's not accessible. So over time, HNS coin becomes scarcer and becomes worth more valuable. I would say that's kind of like the theory of it anyways.
Now, on the bidding process, just to clarify, the reason why there's a reveal period is because people can match their real bid with fake bids, correct?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So that's part of the strategy. Some individuals just have a real bid. Marcus is pretty confident he's just going to bid 100,000. That's his real bid. Compared to somebody like me, maybe I'm being a little sneaky, and my real bid is 80,000, but only I know. And what you can do is place a blind, is what it's called. And so I'll do a blind of 420,000 HNS just to kind of show my strength, and maybe to impede from anybody else. Like if you see like, oh man, he bid 500,000 HNS, there's no way I can win. And so then some people can back away, but there's a lot of different strategies that you can go about it. I would say, probably with the soft fork, with the happening, I would say you're probably going to want to keep, because the issue is whatever bid that you place, it has to kind of stay locked for that duration of that auction until you reveal. So for at least 7 days, even that blind fake bid is locked up with that domain. You can't be using that HNS coin for any other domains. But then once you reveal your bid after a 7-day period, during that reveal period, then you can use that blind elsewhere, but then your real bid is still locked up. So technically, if you bid at the very beginning of an auction, that coin, whatever your real bid is locked up for 14 days, which is going to take you out of the play for some of these premium names. So it's just my belief.
But you have to have ownership of the stuff that you bid. That's basically
HNS coin, yes, you have to own it. I guess you can hold it in main base, which they just have it kind of pulled in a few wallets or whatnot, but it's, you can see it through your account, so you can do that. But yeah, you have to purchase the HNS previously or deposit it into your wallet in advance. And that's why I'd say, leading up to this event, it's pretty common sense, that there will be a lot more buzz by then. Some people will probably want to keep things silent, but I believe that there will naturally be a buzz leading up to the event. So that's why, we're HNS coin right now, we're in a bear market, it's dirt cheap. I think it would be better just to kind of silently accumulate over the coming months. So that way, there could be a huge pop off, and then it's going to be a lot harder to participate in these auctions. Because what we've learned over the past few years, you have two assets. You have your NFT domains, your Handshake top level domains, and you have your HNS coin. One thing we've learned over the past few years, HNS coin has pretty much stayed stagnant, and it hasn't really done too much just yet. Whereas with the domains aspect, that has gone up through the roof. And I think a lot of these domains, since they're all going to become available at once, they're going to, you're going to be able to get some really, really great deals that you wouldn't have been able to get over the past few years. So, in closing, just to wrap up our conversation, it's still early to get in Handshake. This is a second chance, to really get in early. Similar to if you got in 2020 when all the names are kind of opening up on a weekly basis, all the possibilities of a word, name, numbers, emojis were opening up that year. Well, this is a second, rebirth of Handshake, I would say. So a lot of these, 80,000, a lot of them premium names. This is the time. The time is now to really get in. And it's my belief there's nothing quite like Handshake in the technological aspects. I believe, it's my belief, with these kind of projects, Bitcoin, Handshake, it's not like, it's a startup that's behind it, where you have VC funded, where you can run out of money, and then it's just going to die. Handshake lives by its community, and I'm not going to stop. When I first got in 2020, I looked at this as a 10-year project. That is my vision for .tx. It's not like, what's going to happen this year? What's gonna happen over the next 10 years. And so we must have, just with anything, I would say, like any kind of worthy investment or worthy of your time, we have to have a low time preference and have a long outlook. This isn't a high time preference project. And I believe that it's just gonna be realized at some point, you know, that it is the best way to have a free and open web. And it really does unlock the door for, true expression and creativity. And I would just leave y'all, if enough, similar to Bitcoin, if enough people believe that Handshake will become the base of the decentralized web, then it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'll also say there's not, Handshake is the only decentralized root zone at the end of the day, so there's no one that is doing or can do what Handshake does. So I'll end it there.